Welcome, fellow adventurers, to the D&D Universe, where we help players, dungeon masters, and even those who have never played the game have a better understanding of the world and lore of Dungeons & Dragons. The planes are a series of locations that you as a player might travel to. They exist as massive continents completely detached from the rest of the world, with bizarre rules and physics governing each one. They are completely unique to one another, and in this video I'll be covering the basics of every pre-existing plane in the D&D universe. The way the planes connect can best be described as a giant wheel, with the material plane resting in the very center. As you travel further from the center, you'll find planes that represent the core aspects of the physical world, and further still are the planes that represent ideas. There are other ways that a DM might connect the planes, such as a giant tree or two oceans divided by central planes. Some DMs even handcraft their own cosmologies, but for this explanation, we will use the Great Wheel. At the very base of everything lies the material plane. This is where nearly every mortal being lives and where most adventures will take place. The material plane is our plane, where many adventures take place in the world of Dungeons & Dragons, where grass and trees grow and oceans span for leagues. All of the elements combine here to create the world as we know it. You can best understand the material plane by looking outside a nearby window or Googling landscapes. Echoing the material planes are the Shadowfell and the Feywild, two planes that simultaneously exist alongside the material. They are like layers on top of the material plane, only leaking through tears and portals. The Feywild overlaps the material plane. Inside its boundaries are large forests where playful creatures wander, and flowery fields of mystery hold undiscovered splendor. Here we find ogres, hags, fairies, satyrs, and all the magical forest creatures from fairy tales running around in open fields and lurking in heavily forested swamps. The Shadowfell is the opposite, being void of all color and littered with death. Undead creatures and melancholy spirits wander through the black, dry soil covering the Shadowfell. In the sky is an everlasting state of gloom with storm clouds and lightning flashes. These two planes are built very similarly to whatever material plane your party adventures in, where a normal forest with a lake would be a massive sylvan forest with a golden city built on a glimmering lake, or a lifeless concoction of dead trees with a big pile of slime sitting in the place of the lake. Next up, there are the inner planes, divided into the four basic elements that make up the world. Earth, fire, water, and air are all personified by these planes, with their mixtures acting like borders between the realms. Where these planes touch each other and the material plane, you will find the majority of its inhabitants. Starting with the plane of Earth, you will find a world made entirely of stones and gems. At the height of this plane are mountains that climb further than anyone would dare to venture, or could. Near the material plane, you will find caverns that run through every mountain, inhabited mostly by stone genii called the Tao. They will likely have a central hub called the City of Jewels, a settlement made entirely of priceless metals and gems. I highly recommend not stealing anything from here. The plane of fire is a raging, deadly wasteland of burning. The majority of the plane is covered by the cinder wastes and the sea of fire, both dotting with flaming creatures such as Azer and salamanders. The main reason you might be going to the plane of fire is for its renowned capital, the City of Brass, a massive city filled with riches and hundreds of thousands of inhabitants. Its visitors include everything from demons to dragons. The city is widely ruled by the Afridi, though many fire-based creatures also inhabit this wondrous city. The plane of air is a howling empty space, housing hostile winds and great winged creatures strong enough to ride them. More fitting a party who's used to having somewhere to stand are the stone islands that drift through the sky. And in some cases, clouds packed tightly by Jinn to call home. And last of the inner planes, the elemental plane of water, an endlessly spanning sea of worlds. On the surface are only a few islands that house surface dwellers who are constantly at war for territory. Creatures that lurk in the depths range from civilized merfolk to nightmarish aboleths. At the base of the ocean lies the city of 10,000 Pearls, whose capital is a palace of coral inhabited by aquatic genii called Marids. In between each of the elemental planes are combined forces, which are referred to as the planes of ash, ice, magma, and ooze. Overlapping every plane is the Ethereal Plane, a misty and faint location full of onlookers to the worlds below. Those in the Ethereal Plane can observe the world around them, but not interact with it. You might use this plane to escape a threat or pass through walls in forbidden territories. However, beware. Many horrid beings exist in this plane. Ghosts and spirits haunt its dark void and can be just as deadly here as a cursed graveyard. Just beyond the outskirts of the elemental planes are the outer planes. Each one embodies an alignment and is likely governed by the deities of those alignments. Creatures who serve these gods or devote themselves to one alignment might find themselves in one of these planes after death. Because of how numerous these are, I'll describe each one briefly. First off, there is Mount Celestia, a single glorious mountain that embodies justice and grace. Bitopia is a plane divided into two paradises, tamed fields of crop and unkept wilderness that both represent understanding for freedom and law. Elysium, aptly titled the perfect place, is a realm of pure good and happiness. People don't just pass through Elysium, it's nice there. The Beastlands are what rangers dream of on a good night. This is pure wilderness of every environment with no rules past nature. Arborea is a land governed entirely by pure emotion. Rage and joy are both ever present in Arborean inhabitants. Isgard is the heaven of heroes and war, and is never calm. People rise and fall on the eternal battlefield of Isgard. Limbo is the most dangerous plane for travelers of any alignment, and is the essence of chaos. Every element is interchanged at random, and only strong minds can last more than a minute without being obliterated. Pandemonium is a plane of madness, existing as screaming winds tearing through tunnels to torture the poor souls sent there. The Abyss houses every nightmare imaginable, and consists of endless layers with unique horrors. Some say the demon kings of the Abyss occasionally venture to the Underdark to rampage. Carcerai is a plane that is nothing but a perfect prison. It has 6 layers that are uniquely cruel to its inhabitants. Hades has 3 layers of joylessness, hopelessness, and apathy. People sent here become larvae with sorrowful faces of their former selves slugging around in the mud. Gehenna is a plane of avarice, housing creatures who are merciless and selfish. If you pass through here and make it out alive, check your pockets. The 9 hells of Bator are each uniquely horrible and house devils and fiends of unimaginable power and cruelty. Each layer is just as unique as the planes I've noted so far, and I highly recommend that DMs take the time to read about them. Acheron is a very difficult place to picture, but imagine it as 4 iron D6 floating through space, slamming into each other at random. These cubes represent pain and war. Mechanist is a plane of perfected clockwork, housing a creature called Primus and all of his mechanical children. Arcadia is a realm of purity, housing celestial dwarves who live in harmony with the 4 demigods who rule the planes. Connecting every plane is a location called the Astral Plane, a spatial void filled with floating chunks of dead gods and ancient evils. Randomly placed in this space are discs that act as portals to each plane, defined by the color they hold. Not often included in the list of planes are the following, locations that you might never travel to but are still worthy of noting. The Far Realm exists outside of everything. No one knows how to reach it or what nightmares it might hold. What we do know is that horrific aberrations such as mind flayers and beholders originated from here. Sometimes used by dungeon masters is a location called the Outlands, a vast field that has towns based at its edges. Each one is a settlement that exemplifies an outer plane, and is a gateway to that plane. And lastly, there are demi-planes, worlds created at random and are freely shaped by a person or a force that comes in contact with them. Powerful wizards will create their own worlds and isolate themselves inside, or sometimes trap other creatures for nefarious reasons. Each plane is uniquely strange, deadly, and beautiful, but together they make up the world that we adventure in. Be wary, adventurers. The planes are vast and powerful, but it's up to you to overcome them.